All right, I am pleased to be joined by a reoccurring guest of the Touching Gloves Boxing Podcast, Chris Bianchi and Trey. How's it going, guys?
All good. All good.
Thanks for coming, guys. Oh, sorry, what was that, Trey? That's my bad.
I was just about to say, absolute pleasure being on Sports Town podcast, of course. So we obviously made our American debut the last time he was on the show. So we're happy to obviously come back and do what Tyson Fury done and put our faces in America.
Yeah, again, thanks for coming on, guys. And again, the links of the Touching Glove podcast will be down in the description below. So we know a little bit about your podcast as you were on last time, but if you want to talk more about it before we start talking about the epic fight on Saturday night.
Yes, BNJ, man, start us off, man.
Yeah, so literally all it is, we just talk about boxing, we're boxing lovers. So we just, review fights, talk about potential fights and just discuss in more depth, really, and have fun with it.
Yeah, just to sort of add what obviously BNG is saying, we're sports lovers, and of course, having the opportunity to talk about boxing is an absolute honor. We're not pundits, we're not analysts, I would say, but we're just lovers of the sport, and to be able to obviously give our opinion about like a major fight or major event is something that we enjoy doing. So it's for the purists and it's made by purists.
All right. And yeah, let's just go on to talking about the epic fight on Saturday night between Fury versus Wilder. Went 11 rounds. Eventually Fury got the win in the 11th round. But I mean, just what did you guys think about overall the fight?
It was electrifying. Literally. I had goosebumps. I mean, I said from the get-go, it's 50-50 and you're going to see some knockouts. Mm-hmm. And boy, I was shocked. I mean, literally when Fury knocked Wilder down on round 3, I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. But then when Wilder knocked Fury down in round 4 twice, I was like, whoa. But then watching it again, I felt that Wilder was tired. I felt that he didn't have the energy to finish a Fury. But hey, the best man won.
Yeah, you know what? This fight, there's no words to sort of put into how big this fight was. So for me, this was one of the greatest fights I've seen in my entire life in terms of the excitement. And look, there wasn't a lot of skill on show. It was more gritty. It was more whoever had the most heart was going to win the fight. I did say that, obviously in the previous pod, I thought that Wilder was gonna get the win, and he didn't get the job. But we did see that he made a massive improvement from the second fight. So look, you got to give all the credit to Malik Scott and Deontay Wilder's team for the way they prepared this time around for this fight. And look, both there was no losers on that night for me. There was no losers. Everyone won in terms of the coverage, in terms of the fans, in terms of the fighters itself. It's a legacy fight, man. So I think everyone was winners on the night.
Yeah, that fight pretty much gave us everything. I mean, there was five knockdowns total. And of course, it didn't go the full 12 rounds. But with those two type of heavyweight fighters, normally it ends in some type of knockout. But I think the fight gave us everything we wanted. And of course, I think, and Tyson Fury said this after the fight, that he's the best fighter, but Deontay Wilder is the second best heavyweight fighter. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. We'll see with Joshua and Usyk, but I mean, really, I think that fight gave us everything we wanted. Now that the fight is over, who do you think Tyson Fury will fight next? Is it the winner of Joshua versus Usyk or someone else?
My understanding, so you've got Dylan White, he's fighting Otto Wallen this month on the 30th of October. Now, the winner of that, hopefully it's Dylan, he gets to challenge Fury for the WBC. Because remember, Usyk is still in contract to fight Joshua. So at the moment, Fury won't be able to fight Usyk yet. So it's going to have to be the winner of Dylan White and Otto Wellen. So let's just say, okay, Fury has fought Dylan, beats him, then he gets to challenge the winner of Usyk and Joshua. Hopefully it's Joshua, because that'll be 2 Brits and it'll be electrifying. It'll be a big fight in the UK. It'll be the first undisputed heavyweight fight. It's been, I think, over 21 years since it last happened. I think it was Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield in 1999. Yeah, so it's epic.
Yeah, you know what? You're absolutely spot on, BNG. I'm not going to lie. I firstly have to say that in terms of the number 1 heavyweight in the division, for me is Tyson Fury, and the next fight potentially for him is exactly what BNG is saying. It depends on how the body snatcher Dylan White, depends on if he wins his fight. Look, I'm sure he's gonna win the fight, and if it's a big if, because we don't know where Tyson Fury is at in terms of his mind. He might retire, for example. He might just call it quits. We don't know. But on paper, what should happen is he should fight, obviously, the winner between Dylan White and Otto Wallin. And for me, this is a personal thing. As I'm a huge Manchester United fan, I want that fight to happen at Old Trafford for me, man. That would be absolutely amazing. If he can defend his belt at Old Trafford, that would be big. And then have hopefully, like what BNG is saying, the big undisputed fight with AJ, if he obviously beats Usyk in the rematch coming up. So fingers crossed we can have that massive showdown between AJ and Fury. It's not only because of the belts. Obviously, I know what Chris is saying in terms of the last time that there was an undisputed champion crowned. Them two, they don't like each other anyway. It is personal. It's been brewing up for quite some time. And for me, it will be the best way to conclude any sort of beef, which is obviously to get in the ring and to scrap it out. And I'm hoping, obviously, AJ does his part, wins his fight, and if Fury obviously does his part, which I expect he will. But it would be a tough fight against Dylan White if he was to fight Dylan White. So, yeah, exciting times for boxing. Exciting times.
Yeah. And before we kind of talk about what's next for Deontay Wilder, would you guys say that fight between Fury and Wilder was one of the greatest heavyweight fights overall?
Indeed, yes. Yes. I mean, don't get me wrong. When they said that they're having the trilogy, I was like, oh gosh, again. But it was worth the money. It was worth it. I mean, this fight, both men showed heart. Both men showed heart, and like Tremaine said, they're both winners in my eyes.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what BNG saying. Both guys were winners on the night. It was just a tremendous competitive fight between 2 gladiators, 2 warriors. It was just perfect, because we saw a total of 5 knockdowns in a heavyweight fight. 5 knockdowns for the title. That's absolutely massive. Like, for me personally, I thought there was going to be a knockout inside 5 rounds. The way both guys were leading up, man. But it just shows you how much heart and courage that both guys had. Both guys wanted to win, and both guys wanted to obviously end it on their shield. And we saw obviously Wilder push until the end, because I think from round, I would say 5 onwards, Wilder was just finished, man. It looked like he was exhausted. He was tired. Like, the whole fight took everything out of him, man. But it just shows you what sort of character Wilder is. He pushed on. He kept on going. Fury, of course, was giving him some proper shots as well. Like, let's not forget that Fury obviously weighed in at 277 pounds. Imagine that fist being laid on your face, man. He received a lot of damage on that night. So I'm just hoping that obviously both guys can obviously recover quickly, so they can carry on. And I don't think it's the end for Deontay Wilder. I know there's a lot of stuff online about saying things like he's not ready and he should retire. No, I think he's strong. He'll bounce back, and I think this is the beginning between obviously a relationship between Malik Scott and Deontay Wilder. I think they make a tremendous duo, and I think they'll do well.
Yeah, and I think with every, especially a heavyweight fight, you always want to see some type of knockdown. Like, you don't want to see the fight go all 12 rounds and not see any knockouts. Kind of like, well, I guess there was some, but there wasn't really a lot of action in the Usyk and Joshua fight. So you'd rather see some knockdowns like what we saw last fight. So what's next for Deontay Wilder? Does he now fight the loser of Usyk versus Joshua, or just what's the future hold for Wilder?
Yeah, most definitely. I think if Joshua was to lose to Usyk, I think him and Wilder, you know, they've both got 2 L's on their records. Mm-hmm. I think it'll be a big fight, because just remember, in 2018, Wilder was supposed to fight Joshua. The fight never happened. And them two, it's serious, legitimate beef. I mean, even me and Trey spoke about it. They're both, Nigerian? So we were suggesting that they should fight in Nigeria, Rumble in the Jungle, Part 2.
It's absolutely spot on. I agree. I think both guys, let's hypothetically, if let's say AJ, like what Bianchi's saying, if he loses the rematch, I think that would be the perfect fight for both guys to, you know, to kickstart their careers again, because it would be a big fight, especially against someone who they've hated each other for quite some time. They've been back and forth. As Bianchi said, the fight nearly happened, but it didn't happen. And to do with obviously the whole politics of, it was just a crazy situation. But I'm just hoping that one day we can actually see Wilder versus AJ in Nigeria for Rumble in the Jungle 2. That would be absolutely tremendous.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Deontay Wilder now, and just the whole, way. And of course, Dylan White still has to fight on October, I believe. If you guys can tell us more about that fight. And I think you guys said if he wins, he fights Tyson Fury for the WBC, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And if you just kind of want to explain more about his upcoming fight and what you guys think about his career.
Dylan, you know what? I feel that Dylan, he's been through a lot. I feel that some people feel that he's underrated, but I don't think he is, because he was originally supposed to fight Wilder back in 2017. He was mandatory challenge for the WBC belt, and that fight never happened. So he's been waiting for over, I would say, 2,000 days now. So he was supposed to fight Fury in December, but Dylan lost to Povetkin in last year, August. So he had a rematch clause. So he fought Povetkin in March. Yeah, so he beat Povetkin. Now he's got Otto Wallin. Bear in mind, Otto Wallin fought Fury just before Fury fought Wilder rematch. And he gave Fury trouble. Like he bust his eye. So again, Dylan going into this fight, it's a dangerous fight, because I feel that sometimes when we talk about bigger stars, we're overlooking his opponent, and we don't want to overlook his opponent. So I feel that the mission for Dylan is forget Fury, forget all the hype, focus on Otto Wallin, get the job done, and then that's it. Then, your ticket away from the challenge for the WBC. And not just that, Dylan can cause an upset in the division. He could beat Fury. Who knows? He could beat Fury, or they can draw the first fight and they might have a rematch, and then rematch, he could beat Fury. And if he beats Fury, it could be Dylan fighting Usyk for the undisputed, or it could be Dylan fighting AJ for the undisputed. So that'd be another rematch. So anything is possible in the heavyweight division. We've got so many heavyweight contenders. You've got Joe Joyce, you've got Daniel Dubois, you've got Derek Chisora, you've got Joseph Parker, you've got Baby Miller. Who else have you got? There's many more. There's so many names. You still got Wilder. So anything is possible. I always say anything's possible. I remember, and I keep saying this, I remember when AJ fought in the States and they said he's fighting Andy Ruiz. A lot of people was like, oh, this is a joke. But look what Andy Ruiz done. From there, I said to myself, You should never overlook anyone, especially your opponent. Anything can happen. Remember, in the heavyweight division, all it takes, one hit, that's it. Your game plan's done.
Yeah, definitely. You know what? 100% agree with what you're saying in terms of you can't overlook no one in this division because when it comes to heavyweight punching or heavyweight boxing, let's say, anything goes. One punch changes the game, and I think that Dylan White right now, obviously nicknamed the Body Snatcher for a reason. He's someone who's gonna cause a lot of problems. Also, his left hook is one of the most
dangerous
left hooks in the heavyweight division as well. So he's knocked out a few people with that left hook. So for me, he's definitely a threat, and he deserves a title shot. Imagine having to wait. Imagine, let me sort of picture it like this. Imagine you've worked your whole life to be a world champion or to be in a position where you can achieve your goal, which is to be a world champion. And you finally sort of get to a point where the next fight is you're getting a title shot. And then suddenly you're getting told that if there's a delay, this is what's going on and this is what's happened. Imagine having to wait over 1,000 days. This guy has waited over 1,000 days to potentially be in this position that he is now, literally on the 30th. He's got this fight against Otto Wallin. If he wins this fight, then he's got his title shot booked, and that's done. So all I want Dylan White to do is I want him just to focus on the fight, focus on Otto Wallin, don't overlook him. I know obviously he's been waiting for over 1,000 days for a title shot, and naturally you're going to overlook your opponent, but he just needs to get the job done, focus, and once he gets the win, then he's back in the money. He's going to get his title shot. So Dylan, like what Yenji is saying, can cause an upset in this division. He has a left hook which will cause damage, and also he's called the Body Snatcher for a reason. This guy has some serious power, and sort of to describe his character as well, he's not someone who's not scared. He hasn't got any fear as well. He's ready to get in a ring with whoever. Because with Otto Wallin, for example, he could not fight this fight if he doesn't want to. He could tell Eddie Hearn, look, mate, I don't want to do this fight, man. But it shows you what type of competitor he is. He wants to get in a ring with a sort of former opponent of Fury. And I'm guessing he just wants to absolutely annihilate him. So we can all be like, oh, wow. When Fury fought Wallin, this is what happened. But when Dylan fought Wallin, so it's for the build up as well, man. So, let's just hope everyone obviously does their part and, produce the goods so we can actually see this mega fight at Old Trafford. Please.
Yeah, that sounds super exciting. Of course, the pandemic didn't help anything. That just made it even worse and had to wait. So, yeah, I'm definitely excited for all those fights. Let's go start talking about the Usyk versus Joshua fight. It's going to be sometime, next spring. What do you guys think about the fight? And do you think that, or who do you think ultimately will end up winning this fight?
Right. This is the thing. I know Usyk, like I said, in the first fight, a lot of people thought Usyk was the underdog. Now, I've said it, Usyk's got over 300 amateurs under his belt, was the undisputed cruiserweight champion. Now he's come up to heavyweight. He's beaten so far 2 heavyweights, Derek Chisora. No, 3. I forgot his name. He fought some guy in America. Then he fought Derek Chisora, and now he's beaten champion AJ. Now, Usyk is a boxer. In my eyes, AJ came into the sport late. He started boxing at the age of 18. Now, AJ is a fighter. Now, Usyk cannot box him. He's southpaw, and I understand AJ has trouble boxing people or southpaw. The only way to beat Usyk is, because AJ is the bigger man, is to apply pressure on him, close him down. Don't trade with him, because if you trade with him, it's game over. The only way AJ could win is do the same tactics. Like, for example, Fury, when he fought Wilder, did you see what Fury was doing? He's put on weight, but he was applying pressure. He made sure he closed down Wilder so Wilder can't move, throw them mad hooks. He made sure he put his weight on him. Now that's what AJ needs to do. And also he needs to add somebody into his team. He needs to change his team, because I wasn't really happy with his corner on the night, because I thought that they wasn't actually telling him like, look, AJ, you're losing the fight, step up the gear. All I was hearing was, yeah, you're doing a good job. No, you're a champion. In my eyes, he's still a champion, but I believe he has to change the game plan. He has to change the game plan, because if it goes to points, potentially he can lose. So he's going to have to finish him. We need a knockout, KO.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you're 100% right. I think this fight needs to, with me, and this is what obviously I gathered. Obviously, I went to the fight. I was there live at the stadium, so I experienced the whole atmosphere. And let me sort of picture it for you. Imagine the audience. I would say 90% of the audience are rooting for AJ, of course. So you could imagine how it was when obviously Usyk got the decision. So for me, anyway, it was just simply Usyk is the boxer, like what BNG is saying. AJ is the fighter, but for some reason, which is very, very strange, AJ wanted to, or maybe this is part of his team, I'm not too sure, wanted to try and box the slick southpaw. No, like, you saw what Fury done for the fight against Wilder. You saw it. That we spoke about this even in our previous podcast, that the way that Fury fought Wilder is the way that AJ should have fought Usyk. He should have, bulked up, or because I believe for this fight, he was more leaner, he was more slimmer for this fight. For me, he should have just stayed at like his normal heavyweight weight. As soon as like Usyk comes close, hold him up as well, let him feel your weight, slow him down, because Usyk was still very quick. He still had his footwork. He still had his head movement as well. He still looked like it was easy for him at the end of the day. And as I love AJ, I love what he does, man. But for that fight, I think there's just no excuses. I think Usyk was just generally the better person on that fight, and I think he deserved the win. And if AJ doesn't make some changes, I think we're going to see the same result again. We're going to see the same result again.
I think this time, Usyk, because he's so confident, I think he's going to try and go for the knockout.
Yeah, and that would be kind of disappointing, because we still want to see Joshua versus Fury. Ultimately, we wanted to see that since 2020, after Fury knocked out Wilder for the first time. So I think we kind of see that. And I think even though Usyk is a good fighter, he's underrated kind of, but I think altogether we want to see the main match between Fury versus Joshua, but I hope it does happen. So is there another boxing match that we're not really talking about right now that's going to be happening soon that you guys are really excited for?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, man. We've got quite a few fights, man. We've got Canelo versus Caleb Plant coming up. We've got Sean Porter versus Terence
Crawford.
We have got some fights coming up, and I'm excited. November's looking like a good month, and I absolutely cannot wait. Obviously, Sean Porter and Terence Crawford, that's going to be an absolutely incredible fight, because pound for pound, obviously, Terence Crawford is up there in the top 5, and for most, he's the best in the welterweight division for most. So to have this fight against Showtime Sean Porter is massive, because we know with Showtime Sean Porter, he's gonna come to fight. He's gonna make it ugly. He's not gonna let you breathe. So if Terence Crawford is not gonna be ready for that, then he's gonna lose his belt at the end of the day. So if he's gonna be ready to, be in be in the heat with Sean Porter, then let's see. Obviously Crawford on his end, he's saying that he wants to obviously put in a good show. He wants to produce a knockout. So, let's see if he's able to do it, man. But obviously BNG's been looking at the fight in more detail, man. So he can obviously tell you a lot more about what potentially could happen.
It's going to be a good fight, a close fight. Again, Sean Porter, he's going to be the underdog, but I don't know, man. I just don't know, because I feel that Sean Porter, when he fought Errol Spence beat him on points, right? They went all the way to 12th round. So I think
one round that saved Errol Spence, which was that last.
So I feel that the pressure's probably on Crawford, because Crawford wants to get Sean Porter out of there ASAP. He doesn't want it to go on to points, onto 12th round. So if he, I don't know, knocks out Porter, then, then I think Crawford is probably pound for pound one of the best welterweights. But like I say, anything's possible in boxing. Imagine if Porter knocks him out. Listen, I don't know, man. It's the welterweight division is booming. I mean, look, you've got Ugas who beat Pacquiao. He's in the mix, and then you got Errol Spence. You got other upcoming superstars. You've got like the likes of don't know if you heard of him, Conor Benn. He's big here in the UK. So
he's Nigel Benn's son. Yeah, Conor Benn. He's obviously nicknamed the Destroyer as well, undefeated, and he's got a lot of potential. So obviously BNG has been following him for quite some time, so he knows a lot about him.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you guys just said one punch. Anything can happen in boxing. All it takes is one punch. So I forgot. Yeah, exactly. I forgot to mention Canelo Alvarez. He's got a big fight, of course, too. And of course, that huge altercation with, exactly. So before we end the interview, and again, thanks for coming on, but if you guys want to kind of do a quick preview of that matchup.
I think Canelo is going for the knockout early. I think it's, I don't know what was said, but Plant got under his skin. And that was the wrong move to do. So I think my prediction, round between 4 to 8 knockout. Again, I don't really know much about Plant, if I'm honest with you, but I just feel like with Canelo, he's in the next league. He's been constantly active, and he's pound for pound one of the best. So yeah, Canelo.
You know what? Like, looking at it on paper, what you're saying, Chris, 100% right with what you're saying, man. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm looking at quite a few factors. I've been obviously following Caleb Plant now for quite some time now, and there's a reason why they call him Sweet Hands. Sweet Hands. He's very slick in terms of how he pulls like the way he pulls off shots. He's very slick, and I think he's gonna make Canelo think in terms of how he's going to set him up for shots, set traps, and it's going to be interesting for me. And you know what the twist is going to be as well for this fight? I don't know if you guys know, but Andre Ward will be training Caleb Plant as well for this fight. And in the past as well, Andre Ward has always sort of been that situation with Andre Ward and Canelo, even though Andre Ward didn't really call out Canelo, but it's always been up in the air that, these two should have fought, and there's always something there. So I think that Andre Ward has got a sort of blueprint on how to beat Canelo, and who knows, could this help Caleb Plant win the fight? We don't know, but on paper, obviously Canelo's chasing history here. He can be obviously the first Mexican undisputed champion, I believe, isn't it?
Yes.
First in the full belt era, man. So it's gonna be a good fight. I agree with Chris. In between 4 and 8 rounds, there's gonna be a knockout. And you got to go with Canelo. You got to go with Canelo. But I wouldn't be surprised if Plant does win on points as well, with Andre Ward in his corner. But it just all depends on if Plant can withstand the power of Canelo. We'll know this in the first sort of few rounds. Let's see if he's able to withstand the onslaught from Canelo, because he's angry. Clearly, we know that he's going to be angry. So let's see what happens in the night.
Okay. Yeah, and it seems like Alvarez just, I don't know, do you guys think anybody can beat Alvarez, or who do you think actually has the best chance to knock down Canelo?
No, the one of the closest fight he had was with Triple G. I personally think that first fight they had, I personally think Triple G won that fight. That's just my opinion. But I don't think there's anyone there. I don't know. At first I thought one of the Charlo brothers, but I don't know. I can't see anybody. I can't. Nah.
Right now, Canelo's the man. If I'm honest with you, I think Canelo, he's at that mode now where he feels like he's untouchable, unbeatable, and I think he is, man. I'm not gonna lie. I think Canelo right now, there's not a man in this planet right now that can beat him, unless he challenges himself again and moves up to maybe cruiserweight. But I very much doubt it. He's obviously gone up to light heavyweight, won the title there, and he's obviously trying to become the undisputed super middleweight champion. So I think once he achieves that goal, then it's only right that he goes up to light heavyweight, so we could see if he's really the guy.
Yeah. So again, Alvarez seems like he's almost unstoppable, pretty much, at least around his size. So again, thanks for coming on, guys. It was a pleasure talking boxing. And again, if there's anything else you want to add before we end the interview.
Yeah, it was just, JJ, obviously, we love what you do at the Sports Town podcast. It's always great to collaborate with you, of course. And just know that you've always got myself and BNG. We're always going to be here to, talk boxing with you. And look, we just want everyone to, just look out for the Touch Gloves boxing podcast. We're looking to take this global. So, guys, if you love boxing, if you're a purist, if you just want to hear views from just a fan's perspective, you got myself and BNG here.
Okay. All right. Again, thanks for coming on, guys. Again, all the links of the Touching Gloves podcast will be in the description down below. All right. Again, thanks for coming on, guys, and have a wonderful day. Alrighty, I am pleased to be joined by Chris McLean from the Turn a Pair Baseball podcast. How's it going, Chris?
JJ, it's great, man. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to hang out with you and talk baseball.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I understood, I don't know, it was kind of late notice, but thanks again for coming on. And of course, it's been an interesting postseason, not as crazy as it was last year. But before we start talking about that, and before the big news up today, which is Thursday at the time of this recording, or Thursday night, if you want to talk more about your podcast, how we can get it, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so the podcast is, as you mentioned, the Turn a Pair Baseball podcast. You can find it on Apple. You can find it on Spotify, Amazon, just about anywhere you can find podcasts. You'll find my podcast. I've done about 125 episodes, and each episode is unique in that I interview a major league or a minor league baseball player. Occasionally, we've had broadcasters like the Orioles, a play-by-play broadcaster, Melanie Newman, but really, it's primarily ball players, and I love the human side of the game of baseball. So we don't talk a whole lot about spin rate and statistics and things like that. We do a little bit, but we mainly talk about each guy's or woman's journey from, really when they first sort of were introduced to the game of baseball all the way up until the moment that we interview them at, A lot of these players they're incredible athletes, but they've had to go through quite a bit to get where they are. And so the story is always in the struggle. And we talk quite a bit about that and sort of the mental headspace that they're in while they're struggling. And so I think it's, for me, oftentimes very therapeutic to hear that and to kind of talk through some of my own, interesting stories as well. But that's it, man. We talk to baseball players and we learn about them as human beings.
Yeah, it's cool, and it's really interesting how you can you can interview both broadcasters and players. And yeah, when you talk about all like the spin rate and velocity, we don't really talk much about that either. That just kind of, I feel like, makes the game more confusing. Yeah. And at times, I feel like there's room for that at times, but I feel like if you go overboard with it, not many people are going to actually want to pay attention. Some people are, but I think if you go overboard with it, it kind of gets old. But again, thanks for coming on. So first, the big news of the day before we start talking about the postseason is, of course, Mike Shildt getting let go by the Cardinals. I was stunned. I thought he was actually going to get extended, what all the reports were saying. But what did you think about the Cardinals letting go of Mike Shildt? Excuse me.
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, he's been a part of the franchise for quite a while. I personally have thought that he's done a nice job. I was really shocked to see that. And the Cardinals, I think, have been, I don't know, they seem to be patient, but there's a reason why they let go of him. And I think we'll probably find that out in the coming days. But, it's possible that he may not have played into how they want him to lead the team philosophically. And that's generally what happens when you have a guy that has a successful season. I would consider what the Cardinals did to be a successful season. It's unfortunate that they had to play the Dodgers in the first round, who, won 105 games, and that was their wild card game. But yeah, I mean, I was surprised, and I'm curious to see what direction they go from here.
Yeah, I was stunned as well, and I thought they were just going to extend him, and I thought he did a pretty good job as well. I mean, technically he was there for 3.5 years, but more just like 3 full seasons. He made the playoffs in each time. And going from the reports, it was basically they had a difference, really. They had a difference of what they want to do. I think that was the whole reason. But I don't know if it's a great decision. We'll find out next year. If the Cardinals don't make the playoffs or they struggle, I feel like it's going to really look bad on the Cardinals president, John. It's going to be a bad look for the Cardinals. But to be honest with you, I just think it was a bad look because Mike Shildt was a very good manager, I thought, and he did a pretty good job with the Cardinals, especially when they had that, we're not doing great, and they had that 17-game winning streak. And I know there's been reports that said Skip Schumaker could actually be the next manager, or Oliver. It's one of their bench coaches, I think, was the other job, and then there was another guy too. But I just don't think it's a good look for the Cardinals because I think they should have just kept Mike Shildt because I thought the way they were going was – I thought they did pretty good this year despite getting beat by the Dodgers, but I guess we'll see. Who do you think the Cardinals should hire as their next manager?
I don't know. Skip Schumaker is kind of an interesting name. I know he's highly thought of in many circles around the game, but I'll tell you what I miss, or what I will miss about Mike Shildt is that guy, man, he would put an absolute working on a piece of gum. The way he the thing that I always notice about him, and I can't not look at, is the way he chews the gum. It's like I've never seen anyone chew gum like him. He attacks it. It's so weird. Like his jaw moves in a way I've never seen a human's jaw move. So I'll tell you this: if you're listening or you're watching this and you have no idea what I'm talking about, go and find, I'm sure you can find a YouTube clip of Mike Shildt chewing gum. It's different the way he does it. He's like, it's like his lower jaw moves like back and in, back and out, back and out. It's not up and down. It's so interesting. And I would just stare at him and think, man, how does he chew gum like that? I've tried to reenact it and I just can't do it. So that's my breakdown of Mike Shildt right there for you. Real hardcore baseball analysis on the way he chews his gum.
the way that I don't know, Mike Shildt seemed like a pretty laid back manager.
Yeah.
And he seemed like he was pretty easy to get along with. I know Harrison Bader really liked him as a manager, and it seemed like he did a nice job toward the end of the year. So I don't know, Mike Shildt, I don't know. I feel like he's going to get hired very soon as a manager. I mean, there's only 2 other openings, so I don't know if he'll get hired by the Mets or Padres. But I mean, the Padres probably wouldn't. That would be a nice hire for them, especially with what happened to them last season. But I mean, I just think that Mike Shilt's going to get a job very soon here, and the story is interesting too because he never played baseball he never went to the majors. He was hired by the Cardinals back in 2004 as a scout, and then he just kind of worked his way up. So it was a really cool story. I kind of hate to see the way it ended, but I don't know. We'll see what happens next year, and I just got a feeling that someone's going to hire him very soon as their next manager. But
he'll land on his feet. He'll either land as I wouldn't be surprised if there were more managerial openings other than just the 2 that we've got right now. I know baseball, it's actually interesting that the Cardinals did make the move, although they didn't officially announce it. It's just news that broke, similar to the Cubs GM search. Baseball always says, hey, we'd like you to not break any news during the playoffs, which honestly makes no sense. To me, it's an off day. Baseball should be breaking news, not today, but yesterday. They should have been breaking news. Baseball has no idea how to market the game. They're just terrible at it. But that's a whole different conversation. I think Shilt's going to land on his feet. If he doesn't get a job on a bench somewhere, I could very easily see him landing a job as a special assistant to a GM somewhere. Maybe a GM that, a lot of the GMs now are, really, really smart, Ivy League educated guys that maybe didn't play the game of baseball. And so a guy like Mike Shildt would be a really good guy to have because he can help kind of talk through the inner workings of a clubhouse, especially like a younger GM or at least a GM new to the game. So not new to the game, but I'm sorry, new to the role. So he'll land on his feet. He'll do well. He'll be back on a bench, I would say, in the next year or 2.
Yeah, and I think it is kind of weird how baseball doesn't like for news to be broke during the playoffs, even though the NFL and I think the NFL and the NBA do this all the time. And I just think that, especially during free agency, it takes so long, and sometimes players won't sign until right before spring training starts, or even in spring training they'll go out and sign with a team. It's just really weird how the MLB does that, and I think that hurts the game in my opinion. But I mean, you can't really do anything at the moment. I just think the MLB definitely needs to think about possibly, marketing it better and stuff like that. But speaking of the Padres opening position, they of course let Jace Tingler go. Who do you think first of all, were you shocked that the Padres let Jace Tingler go?
No, not at all. The way that season ended, as good as that team is, the talent that team has, I understand that they were in a tough division with 2 teams that won more than 100 games. But they they didn't play to their potential. A number of guys played well below what they should have played. It was a rough season. I've got a number of friends out in San Diego that are Padres fans. I felt for them. That to me, that's a very likable team. You've got, I love you, Darvish, Fernando Tatis. Manny Machado's a polarizing figure, but I like Manny Machado. They just got a bunch of guys that I like. And I think that team with the right manager is a 100-win team. They didn't play like it this year, obviously. They finished well below expectations. My personal choice, I would love to see Ron Washington. I'd love to see him get another shot. I think he's done great things with the Braves in his time there. I thought he did a really nice job with the Rangers when he was there. He was he played base. He helped the Rangers play baseball in October, and if you haven't noticed, they haven't been back since he's been gone. Mm-hmm. So I'm a Ron Washington fan. I watch a lot of YouTube videos of baseball drills. I'm a total baseball nerd, man. And Ron Washington has a number of them out there. The Braves TV, where their TV station is out down there in Atlanta, will film these sessions of him running guys through drills. And I love the way he interacts with the players. The players have to love him. And the guy is just an absolute wealth of knowledge. So for me, it's Ron Washington or bust in San Diego.
Yeah, and I think when they hired Jace Tingler, and of course I think Andy Preller, the GM, was saying that he wanted to hire someone with experience. But at the same time, if you go out and hire his guys that he hired were Andy Green and Andy Preller and Jace Tingler, which they're not. They were. I think they were both first-time managers. So it kind of felt like Andy Preller was trying to hire guys that were yes men, that he could control the team. That's what I kind of felt. But if they hired a guy like Ron Washington, that'd make a lot of sense. What about a guy like Bruce Bochy? Maybe he'd come back to manage the Padres?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible he could come back, but I don't know. I mean, if I'm Bochy, he's accomplished so much in the game. It would be kind of cool to see him come back. And I think if he did come back, he would be very successful. He's a guy that has had success wherever he's gone. But if I'm Bochy, just enjoy retirement and, spend time with the family and do your thing. But you know how it is, man. These guys can never really get away from the game. I mean, Tony La Russa is a classic example. The guy's like 120 years old, and he's still coming back. And forgetting rules, by the way, was a very, very anti-hiring Tony. It was very against the hiring of Tony La Russa with the White Sox, but I guess the alternative was A.J. Hinch. So maybe they did okay.
I don't know the whole thing about the White Sox situation. I know when they hired Tony La Russa, there were so many people up in arms, but I mean, they still made the playoffs. And I mean, they took the Astros to 4 games? Mm-hmm. The Astros are solid, but I never really had a problem. And maybe I'm biased towards Tony La Russa because he managed the Cardinals for so long. But yeah, talking about Bruce Bochy, he was very successful. I think I think he had a winning record with the Padres, so he was really successful there. And of course, he won 3 World Series with the Dodgers. So I can understand what you're saying. Just kind of, just enjoy retirement. But I don't know. I think that if the Padres hire Bruce Bochy, they would be back to being what they were. And, of course, their pitching wasn't great. That was kind of the downside. And, of course, they couldn't make the trade for Max Scherzer, which I think ultimately really hurt them. But I just think that if they hired a guy like Bruce Bochy, and even if they hired a guy like Mike Shildt, who is now available, that would be a solid hire. So just someone with managerial experience. Did you have anything else to add to that?
I would say any of the 3 names we've mentioned, Bochy, Shildt, or Ron Washington, would all be upgrades, I think, over Jace Tingler. I think all would challenge Preller, which I think is what he needs. There was an article written in The Athletic a couple weeks ago. The Padres have some issues, and one of the issues is he likes yes men. The one thing I'll say about Tony La Russa is La Russa was hired to fix a mistake made in 1983. 1983. So the White Sox had a good season. Hawk Harrelson, you may know the name Hawk Harrelson, retired color commentator for the White Sox. Retired play-by-play member for the White Sox, was the GM of the White Sox for a period of time. And he fired Tony La Russa. And then he was then fired and then brought up back into the broadcast booth. But La Russa and Jerry Reinsdorf are close friends. And I think Reinsdorf took over the coaching search from Rick Hahn and said, listen, we're bringing my guy in. And I don't think Hahn was on board. It was pretty clear in their opening press conferences that Hahn was not on board. I think he did his best to try and sell it. By the end of the season, though, by the time they got to the playoffs, even the biggest Tony La Russa skeptics, myself included, were okay with the move. Hahn seemed to be okay with the move as well. And, I think at the end of the season, La Russa did okay. That team lost because of deficiencies, not because of Tony La Russa, and also because Houston just absolutely hit the heck out of the ball when they played.
And it feels like everybody always tries to. I think people are waiting for the collapse of the Astros, and it's not happening. Like, people, I think, thought the Astros were going to take a massive step back this year, and yet they were still the number 2 seed in the American League, and right now they're in the ALCS. So I feel like people don't give the Astros enough credit. And I mean, what have you thought about the Astros season overall? I mean, do you think they have a chance to maybe play in the World Series versus maybe the Dodgers? Of course, the Dodgers could be eliminated by the time we get this recording done. But what did you think about the Astros overall season?
Yeah, so the Astros had been interesting. Here's my thing with Major League Baseball. the regular season and the playoffs are two very different. It's obviously the same sport, but it's so very different. You could have a team full of boppers and hit all kinds of home runs and fill up the stat book and look like gods during the regular season. You could have, Joey Gallo, Anthony Rizzo, Giancarlo Stanton, and Aaron Judge. But guess what happens in October? Those guys get struck out a lot. And what the Astros don't do is strike out. They put the ball in play. And there's a theme. If you go look at the box scores of every game so far in the playoffs, the teams that are winning and the teams that have advanced put the ball in play, they don't strike out, and they strike out their opponent. And the Astros are no different. The White Sox couldn't hit quite as well as the Astros, and the Astros they put the ball in play. If you look at guys like Carlos Correa had an at-bat in Game 4 with the bases loaded. I think La Russa made the mistake here by leaving Rodon in the game too long. Clearly he was laboring. He couldn't get anything over except for his fastball. He had just struck out Gurriel on a high fastball. Correa comes up and actually after the game said this. He said, I knew he was going to throw me a fastball high, and I knew it was going to come in hard. So I sat and waited for it with 2 strikes. And what did he do? He put it off the left field wall, one hop the left field wall, 2 runs scored, and they never looked back, and they dominated the game, won 10-1. But what's interesting is the Astros, those guys, and the Red Sox do it really well. They go up to the plate, and they do what's needed in the moment. So if I need to go up there and I need to hit one opposite field into the gap, that's what I'm swinging for. In the regular season, you get a lot of guys that go up there and they're looking to hit the ball 5 miles. And then when you do that all regular season and you come into the playoffs, it's hard to adjust from being the guy who just swings out of your socks to the guy who's looking to slap the ball in the opposite field. And those teams do that throughout the course of the season, and that's why they're successful when it comes to October. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you surprised the Red Sox beat the Rays? And are you surprised that the Red Sox are currently in the ALCS?
I don't want to say surprised. I mean, if you asked me before the series, I would have picked the Rays to win.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you go back and look at the numbers, the Red Sox struck out only 3 times in Game 4. They hit over 300 in the series as a team. They put the ball in play. I mean, they hit 444 in Game 4. Tampa Bay struck out 20 times in Game 3. So it goes back to what I said earlier. The team that strikes out the least and puts the ball in play the most wins. If you're not striking out, an out where you put the ball in play is far more productive than an out where you strike out. And when the Red Sox would get out, they would put the ball in play. And generally what happens is you're putting pressure on the defense. You're allowing guys to advance. If there's a guy on second base and you hit a ground ball, he's going to go to third. If you hit a pop fly, he's going to sacrifice over. And those teams are good at it. The Red Sox are good at it. The Rays did a poor job of getting guys on base. And when you don't get guys on base, a home run is 1 run. The Red Sox would get guys on base and hit a home run, and 2 or 3 guys would score. And that was the difference in the game or in the series.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think before the season or before the playoffs begin, I thought the Rays would be the top team, or they were the top team in the AL, but I thought they were going to go to the World Series and maybe get a revenge from last year. But, I mean, what have you thought about the whole Rays situation? As you know, they're still one of the best teams in the league, yet they have one of the worst fan attendance. Do you think there's ever a chance where the Rays will finally move out of Tampa and maybe go to Montreal or somewhere like that?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly can't imagine a scenario that they stay in Tampa. I don't know why the city would build a stadium there. And there's things I've read where, the ballpark is really not in Tampa. It's hard to get to. I don't know, whatever the case is. Florida, although a baseball hotbed, has 2 major league teams, and the attendance in both of those parks are awful. Montreal sounds romantic. I love the idea of it. I love the Expos, right? The whatever that logo, the Florida Leaf. I don't know how to say it. Whatever. You know what the logo was, right? I have it actually right there on my wall somewhere. I don't know. It's over there. Yeah, right there. Sorry. But my point is, the reason the Nationals or the Expos are now the Nationals is because the Montreal Expos home games looked like Tampa Bay Rays home games. There were 18 guys out playing on the field, and there was probably 18 people in the stands. And I get it, they had an old, out-of-date stadium. But, I mean, other teams had old, out-of-date stadiums they filled up too when the team was good. And in the mid-'90s, that Expos team was good, and they weren't filling the stands. So I don't know if baseball in Montreal makes sense. I think the notion of splitting the season between the Rays and the Expos does one of two things. Either if you actually do it, they're just testing out to see if Montreal can draw. If it does, maybe they give them another shot. My actual thought process there is it's not really a real thing. It's a negotiating ploy, not with Tampa Bay to see if they'll get them to build a stadium, but with it's all about the collective bargaining agreement. And when they all get together to negotiate, if Major League Baseball, the owners are saying, hey, we're going to do this thing where they play half in Montreal and half in Tampa Bay, whether real or not, it's something that when Major League, the Players Union says, hey, we want this, Major League Baseball they have a tactic they can use, or they have a chip they can play. Like the owners might say, hey, we want you to get rid of this, or we want you to do that. And the players are like, no, we're not doing that. And they'll be like, I tell you what, we won't do the split thing. We'll keep them in Tampa if you do this. And then the players are like, oh, okay. So they create like this fake thing to then be used as a bargaining chip. So that's actually what I think is happening. But that's just a theory. I may be wrong.
Yeah, and I know it seems like, and this is, it seems like the A's are moving over to Las Vegas sooner. It seems like they're going to be out of Oakland soon. I did hear a report, this might have been about a year ago, that Memphis really wanted a baseball team. Do you think if Tampa Bay was able, or if they were able to move, do you think Memphis would make some sense? Or what do you think about the whole city of Memphis?
Yeah, so if you're going to go to Tennessee, Memphis is not the city I would pick. It's Nashville. I think Nashville's probably somewhere in the top 4. I think your 4 choices, if you're gonna leave, or you're gonna Charlotte, that's probably number 4. Number 3 is probably Portland, and then I think you've got Nashville and Montreal somewhere. So I think you've got Nashville, Montreal, Portland, and Charlotte, and then of course Vegas, because Vegas is just stealing everything from Oakland. Pretty soon they're going to take Too Short and MC Hammer with them too. But I think Portland, actually, to me, I love the idea of Portland as a team because, one, I had the Portland Diamond Project, which is the group that is working to bring that team. Russell Wilson is a part of that group, trying to bring a team to Portland. They've got the area that they want to build the stadium. They've got renderings of what it looks like. It looks amazing. Boats can actually dock at the ballpark and get out and watch the game. I mean, it's a really cool concept. I also like the idea of Montreal, as long as you keep them the American League East. Because then you'd have Montreal and the Toronto Blue Jays in the same country, in the same division. That could be really interesting from a rivalry standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, and Portland, I always forget about Portland, but it seems like they're trying to get any type of professional sports team out there. I know they have the Trailblazers and they have the Portland Timbers, but they don't have – I think they've been trying to get an NFL team for a while. They've been trying to get an MLB team. I didn't think about them. Charlotte makes a lot of sense. I think another city, maybe Indianapolis, maybe. Of course, Louisville would probably be a big place too, but unfortunately they're right next to Cincinnati, so the Reds would probably make us think about it. But – yeah, that would make a lot of sense. I just heard the report about Memphis possibly, and the Rays are just such a good team, but yet they have no fans, and I think it's just because Florida just seems like it's not much of a baseball town, I guess. It's more of a football or basketball. It's not really a baseball town, but, I mean, we'll end up seeing what happens. Yeah, exactly.
College baseball fills up. Florida State, they don't mess around. They fill that park up. That's a wild, crazy environment. Some of the guys I've interviewed that play in the ACC have told me Florida State is a wild place to play. You don't hear people saying that about playing in Tampa.
Yeah, I just think, and plus the stadium, it doesn't seem like you mentioned the stadium's not very good. I think they built that stadium in 1992, and they didn't get a team until 1997, so it was empty for like 5 years.
You know why they built?
Which doesn't make any sense either.
You know,
but
that stadium was built because the White Sox were threatening to move there.
Okay.
And
I did not know anything about that.
And then they got Chicago to build the new Comiskey Park, and they built a cookie cutter stadium. It was the last of that breed of stadiums. And then the next stadium built after that was Camden Yards, which is really Camden Yards began the movement of building these beautiful architectural kind of old school meets new school ballparks, which now they all look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting how that works out, and I actually didn't know anything about that, so I guess that makes more sense. So we go back to the postseason, and again, we're kind of running out of time here, but what player has impressed you the most this postseason?
You know, there's a couple guys that have impressed me, and none of these names are names that anyone's going to be surprised by, but I would say that I've got a list of guys. Luis Robert, the White Sox, had an incredible series, hit 467. His OPS was over 1,000. I think he is going to be the next big star in Major League Baseball. For the next 10 years, that guy will be like, I don't know if he's going to be Mike Trout good, but he's a star. He's a future MVP. Chris Bryant has had an incredible postseason so far. He has matched his home run totals from 2017 to 2020 postseason. I say that partly in jest because he was awful with the Cubs in the postseason at the plate after 2016, which is part of the reason why the Cubs broke it all up this year, because all of those core guys were terrible at the plate. His one home run was in a garbage time blowout loss to the Dodgers. In a game that I was at in 2017, they lost like 15-2. It was a clincher. So I got to see a team clinch to go to the World Series. It was just the team that I was going to see my team play. So that kind of sucked. Bryant, Robert, Kike Hernandez is probably the biggest surprise of the group. Carlos Correa is another one, but Kike has been amazing. Timely hits. He's hitting 435 in the playoffs. And then I can't go without mentioning my guy, Wander Franco. He's got everything about him. He's cool. He plays hard. He's a good ball player. He's put up some really nice numbers. The thing I think I loved about him the most has nothing to do with his play, but the yellow batting gloves and the elbow pad and the shoes, man, that's a look. That's a good look. It pops. It looks great on TV.
Yeah, and that's funny that you mentioned that. But and again, thanks again for coming on, Chris. It's been a great talk. But one thing that I've always kind of wanted to talk more about is, should the MLB expand the playoffs? Like, should they add another team? I know they did that in 2020 because of the COVID, because of the pandemic. But do you think the MLB needs to add at least one more team to basically to make it like, do you think they need to add 6 teams in each league, or do they need to go 8, or do you like the way it is?
I mean, I like the way it is. I think if you look at the standings, and you go one more team down in the National League, I think it would have been Cincinnati. And Cincinnati, to me, was not a playoff team. They would have gotten absolutely throttled in the playoffs. They've got Nick Castellanos and Joey Votto. It would have been fun to see those guys play at least one game, maybe a 3-game series in the playoffs. But I don't, where I think it hurts is you look at the American League, I would have loved to have seen Seattle and Toronto make the playoffs, probably more so than the Yankees or the Red Sox. The Red Sox are obviously proving their worth. But no, I think where it's at right now is great. You get one team from each division, and then you get 2 wild card teams. This year was an absolute anomaly in terms of how well the AL East performed to have 4 teams over 90 wins. But I think normally 5 is it. There's sometimes where you look at a wild card game and you've got 2 teams that one of those teams really barely deserves it. So I think they're at the sweet spot with 10 teams. So, no, I don't think. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yes, I do have some thoughts about that. Now, I thought last year there was too many teams. I understand you wanted to get more games, but having 16 teams altogether is too much. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the way the NBA does it, where there's more teams making it than not making it. I know the NFL recently expanded. And, of course, the NBA doesn't really have a choice sometimes because 7 teams doesn't really make any sense. And I think 6 teams is not enough for each conference. But I think the MLB needs to add one more team in each league. And then instead of doing a wild card game, they should have the 1 or 2 seeds the top 2 seeds get a bye, and the 3 and 6 and the 4 and 5 play a 2 out of 3 game series. And then the winner of the, let's say, the 2 and 3, and then they go on to, after the 6, they go to the 3 or 4. I think the 1 seed plays the 4 and 2 and the 3, something like that. Or they could just have the 1 seed play the 6, the 2 play the 5, and 3 play the 4, and do a 2 out of 3. I think that's more fair, and I think that also makes it more interesting. That's just my take. And maybe, like, especially with how good the American League East, as you were talking about, I thought, like I said, the Mariners and the Blue Jays and all those teams deserve to make it. Of course, one of those teams would have still missed it, but I thought that would make the most sense. But I don't know. I just think that the MLB needs to at least put one more team in each league. I think 5 is just not quite enough. So
yeah, and I think one thing I would say, in my mind, you keep the 5, but if you went to 6, I wouldn't be offended by it. It wouldn't hurt. I mean, it's never bad to see one extra team make it because that just means we've got more games to watch in October. But I would like to see them, if you have 2 wild card or 3 wild card teams, start the playoffs, but seed the teams like you mentioned, 1 through 6. Don't automatically give don't put the 2 wild card teams in a wild card game because the Dodgers end up in a wild card game, yet they've got the second best record in baseball. And then, if they were to advance to play Atlanta gets the home field advantage. And I don't know I don't remember how many wins Atlanta has, but I think Atlanta probably finished 12 or 13 games behind the Dodgers. So they don't deserve to host it because they played in an absolute garbage division in the NL East.
Yeah, they could do, the NBA does this where they just do the best teams get the top overall seeds, and that meant the Dodgers, instead of getting a 4 seed, they would get a 2 seed.
Exactly.
I wouldn't mind that either, just getting rid of...
Exactly.
But then you wouldn't really need divisions, and I guess divisions would be more of just bragging rights and to put one more banner in your stadium or whatever, but I don't know. That wouldn't be a bad idea. But yeah, the Dodgers definitely deserve to have more than just a wild card game. Of course, I'm a Cardinals fan. I was just disappointed the way our season ended, but I don't know. We'll see. I just think the MLB needs to do something, needs to expand at least once. I think the wild card game is great and everything. I just think they need to expand at least one more team. And then, of course, I can kind of wonder this, and there's so many people who have so many different opinions about this, but who do you think right now is the NL MVP? Is it Juan Soto? Is it is it Bryce Harper? Who do you think the NL MVP is?
So here's what baseball should do. They have a guy who had one of the best seasons, maybe one of the best seasons of all time, and he's going to finish second in the American League because the guy that's going to win it had an incredible season offensively and had an incredible season pitching. Hasn't been done since, Babe Ruth. So Shohei Ohtani is obviously going to win the American League. Just give the NL MVP to Vlad Guerrero Jr. Like, don't even screw around. Just give it to him. He's a badass. He deserves it. It's unfortunate that he's going to have this great season and finish second. But to really answer your question, it's a coin flip between Soto and Harper. I'm a bigger Juan Soto fan, so I'm going to give it to Juan Soto. I think he's just, there's something. So I went to a Nationals game in DC, actually the day of the trade deadline, where the Cubs and Nationals combined to trade like 10 players. And so I got to see Soto play there. And then I went to the a Rockies game in Colorado a week and a half ago. And I'll tell you, I went to a lot of baseball games this year, and I think I probably saw 5 or 6 different ballparks around the country. And the most impressive thing I saw was, I don't know why, Juan Soto working a full count and taking a walk it's artwork. The guy takes a ball an inch off the plate and does it with confidence because he knows it's a ball. The guy's like 22, 23 years old, has incredible command of the strike zone. If he doesn't swing at it, it's not a strike. He's so good. I mean, I know it's not about perceived talent for the MVP. It's about who's actually the most valuable player for their team. And that team sucked, but Juan Soto's, he's my pick. Who's your pick?
To be honest with you, the AL MVP was pretty much a walk in the park. Ohtani, with what a season he had. And of course, Guerrero's going to have a great season as well, or had a great season as well, and he doesn't even get mentioned in there. It's just tough. I would probably say Bryce Harper, but I mean, Juan Soto's not a bad pick either. It's just interesting because all the MVP candidates on the NL side didn't even make the playoffs. Like, I thought that was really interesting the way that ended. And of course, Buster Posey had a great season, but not like an MVP type of season. So I don't know. I think you can I wouldn't be upset if Soto got it. I just think that everybody has been saying Bryce Harper lately. And for a while there, before he got injured, Jacob deGrom was considered an MVP candidate or somewhere in there. But of course, he got injured, so that kind of took him out. But I'd say Harper, but I wouldn't mind if Soto got it either. I just think the NL side, it wasn't as good as the American League. And yeah, Guerrero kind of got screwed over by this, but I mean, he still had a great season. But maybe he'll end up having an MVP season next year. So, and again, thanks again for coming on. We're just going to wrap up. I got one more question for you. I've been usually every time someone who has a baseball podcast come on, I talk about World Series predictions. Who do you have in the World Series who do you have in the World Series this year?
So I have the Red Sox playing whoever wins tonight. The Giants and the Dodgers.
Okay.
I'm not very good at predicting because my World Series prediction this year, well, those teams have been eliminated already. And I think it was more wishful thinking because I was hoping the Brewers would make it. I live in Milwaukee or right outside of Milwaukee, and I was hoping to go to a World Series game. But I've got the Red Sox playing either the Dodgers or the Giants. Take your pick because either the Dodgers or the Giants would beat the Red Sox to win the World Series. My hope is the Giants. It's been too long since they've won a World Series. It's been about, 2014.
7 years.
7 years. Yeah, it's too long for any fan base to wait.
Yeah.
So I feel bad for the Giants fans that have been long suffering. So actually, of the Red Sox, the Giants, and the Dodgers, they are the most longest suffering fans at 7 years. So, no, that's not why. I love Buster Posey. Obviously, being a Cubs fan, as you can see behind me, I love for Chris Bryant to win a World Series. I like the Giants, man. What about you?
Yeah. Before the season started, I thought there'd possibly be another rematch of the Red Sox or the Rays and Dodgers. Of course, the Rays are out. I think, whoever wins between the Giants and Dodgers. I think the Braves are decent, but let's be honest, the NL East was not very good this year. However, the Braves did upset the Brewers, which I thought was great, but I don't think the Braves. To be honest with you, I think the Braves get beat by whoever wins tonight. And the American League, oh man, I secretly kind of want to see the Dodgers and Astros again and see how that works out. That would be fun.
Be good.
But I would probably agree with you saying the Red Sox or whoever wins tonight. But I would love to see the Dodgers and Astros. That'd be fun to watch a rematch of that. But anyways, we'll see what ends up happening. Of course, at the time of this recording, it's on Thursday night, so we don't know yet who the Giants or the Dodgers win. So, again, thanks for coming on, Chris. And if there's anything else you want to add before we end the interview,
I will. So, anyone listening to this, if you've made it this far, if I haven't turned you off, find me on Twitter at TurnApairChris. And there's some big news coming very, very soon. I can't break it. It would be very bad if I broke the news, but we've done a lot of really cool things on the podcast. Like I said, I've interviewed 125 ball players, a lot of major league guys, a lot of all-star players, former AL Rookie of the Year, World Series winners. We've had a lot of guys and women on the podcast that are doing big things. What's coming soon will trump all of that. it's going to be amazing. And so that's about all I can say. But follow the Turn a Pair Baseball podcast on Twitter. We'll have all sorts of information and something really, really cool that I am giddy over what's coming. So more to come.
All right. Thanks again for coming on, Chris. To get all the links of his podcast will be down in the description below. I'll start following you on Twitter as well. So, again, thanks for coming on, Chris, and have a wonderful night and enjoy the rest of the postseason.
JJ, thanks so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. And anytime you want me to have me on again, I look forward to it.
All right. Sounds good.